Hi, good evening. Firstly, thank you to Phil and the Agile Roundabout crew for setting up this event. It's really amazing turnout. Thank you all for coming on a, what is it, Thursday? Wednesday? I forget which day of the week it is. Life's a blur. Thank you for all coming out, seeing old friends, Muga, who we used to work together, and seeing you on the other side of the fence for a change. Looking forward to your talk. I've only been here since August, so it's pretty new for me, but I think bringing experience from outside into a new industry helps you get fresh perspectives. And I thought maybe I'd share a little bit with all of you. I don't know how many of you work in the music industry. Hopefully all of you work in technology. Yes? Okay, good. Any in music industry apart from Mugo? Just a few? Okay. So a few of you will actually understand how crazy and complicated this industry is. But I firmly believe that given the power of sort of zero-cost distribution on the internet and what we're seeing with Spotify and Apple Music and various other streaming providers, technology will play a hugely fundamental role. But one thing to remember is ultimately music can only be appreciated and enjoyed if we have creators who create the music, and those creators can get paid. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. So let me start by not starting. Sorry. Okay. Let's start with that. Let's start where all good stories start, especially for building products for users, and start with a creator. So imagine you're a young budding artist with a wonderful talent, and you want to get a recording deal and you want to get your music published and distributed, and you want millions of users to enjoy your great work. Typically, in the historical world, what you would do is you would end up talking to a music label. We've all heard of those before, right? And you would do a demo tape or something similar, and they would think that you've got great potential talent, and they'll sign you up on a deal, which is probably 10 years, and they'll give you a $500,000 advance. Now, our user here is 21 years old. $500,000 is a huge amount of money. So you go, whoo, I've made it instantly. The fine print, however, dictates that you need to have at least 10 global hits, and all sorts of other strings attached. And if you don't meet those objectives, you will probably lose the rights to the intellectual property, i.e. all of your creations that have been managed by that label in perpetuity. So effectively, what you're doing is you're taking money and enslaving yourself. Now that's not a pretty good deal, right? And then of course, there are all sorts of challenges in terms of being able to create content and music that will really be a global hit. So let's break it down a little bit. So imagine I'm now the artist, not quite the same look as our persona here, but I get a global hit. And I've got $8 million of worldwide income, huge number of different meta points, and across lots of territories. Sound interesting? Let's break it down further, right? One song probably has multiple different writers. It has lots of different countries, but it's not just about a song in a country on a CD or on a Spotify playlist. Music gets distributed over so many different forms, whether it be TV ads, whether it be radio plays, whether it be concerts, whether it be live performances, and then of course we also have our streaming providers in the forms of Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, Amazon Prime, Amazon Music, Deezer, various others, right? And so the numbers just blow up. And for every single interaction of this music, there is data that is being generated and collected and utilized to figure out exactly who engages with that music, and also understand how the writers, i.e. the creators, the writers and the artist, actually get their share of payment. So how does that work? Let's break it down. Hit song in a single country, you've probably got distribution around broadcast, which is TV radio. You go digital, the numbers are hugely disproportionate in digital, but the share of revenue might not be that great. Retail, which would be CDs, vinyl, etc. Print, things like the actual score, musical score, so people buy that, believe it or not, but they do. And then live performances, right? So you've got lots of different sources of income for a given track. Now, let's make our persona real, and let's talk about Imogen Heap with the song Hide and Seek. Some of you may know of it. If not, it's a great track. And let's look at how the money flows if you're a digital streaming provider, or a DSP as it's called in the music industry. And those of you that work in ad tech, yes, there are also DSPs, but they're completely different. And so sometimes these acronyms become quite confusing. But you effectively have a publisher and a recording side representing the artist, the label, and the publisher typically representing the writers. And in this particular example that I'm using here, this is actual data of this particular song over the DSPs in a market like the UK floating down. Pay attention to the number at the bottom. How much does Imogen actually receive of all the millions or billions of streams across those digital streaming providers? Not a great deal of money. And by the way, there's a link, you can go look at the details. Now, on the CD vinyl side, again, sticking with the UK, there is again a huge number of intermediaries and collection points that take a cut of that money. And again, pay attention to the number at the bottom. Imogen only gets a fraction of that. Similar in live performances. Now, of course, on live performances, there will be an agreed fixed fee, especially if you're an artist that's doing a leading act in a concert, and sometimes supporting acts, etc. But supporting acts don't quite make as much. This is purely on distribution of proportion of ticket sales, and Imogen gets a small proportion of that. And if you look at the radio, again, there are different actors and intermediaries involved. And again, you might think, oh, that's a good income revenue source. I'm getting at least a higher proportionate revenue share by getting played on radio. But we're starting with very, very small numbers here, and so 42% might not be all that big, right? So you can kind of understand how complicated it is and how many different parties end up handling and managing the flow of money, i.e. for royalties, for artwork created and those creations distributed over multiple different sources, right? Pretty interesting and pretty complicated problem, especially from a data collection, data integrity, and data processing perspective, to ensure that somebody like Imogen actually gets paid. Now, imagine this on a global scale, right? And every single collection society or every single intermediary in every country does it differently. And in order to understand how the money flows, there are two sides of this equation, both the creation and distribution, and of course also the collection. And I'm going to invite Dave, who's been in this industry a lot longer than I have, and have probably devoted, 9 years of your life trying to solve this problem. So he can talk about it a lot more intelligently than I am. Dave.
Hopefully. I'll be back. Sorry, this one's for recording. So, yeah. So as Rian said, can everyone hear me all right? Yeah, good. There are two sides to this story. So imagine for all of those players that you just saw in all of those little graphs. That was first of all one territory. So in every other territory, there's a load of other players and a load of other people taking a load of other cuts. And in order to actually get paid here, there's the rights flow. So, one song, 3 writers, multiple versions potentially, remixes, people doing mashups, people doing acoustic versions, people doing covers. Writers could all be with different publishers. So all those publishers are sending the data to the various sources that want it in different formats with different information sometimes, causing conflicts, all in different territories, and all the territories have their own societies and they have their own rules. Over time periods, things could change. You could move to a new publisher, you could change your society affiliation. The potential for ownership can change, again, similar thing. And that's flowing through thousands of licenses. So that's not just the one kind of European blanket license for streaming. That's licenses for TV ads. That's licenses for albums in the US, mechanical licensing. And each of those requires us to tell the various people who need to know what rights we control so that we can then get paid. But then when we do get paid, there's a whole other set of problems coming back. So, we saw before, royalties, there's billions of consumer interactions. There's streams, there's TV views, there's everything, making billions of micropayments across thousands of sources in hundreds of territories, and those territories don't all speak English. Some of them have automated accuracy checks, some of them don't, so some of them you don't know what you're getting and you have to double check it. And we've said no universal industry identifiers. There are technically industry identifiers, but there aren't really, because not everyone uses them the right way, or some people decide that they'll just use a new identifier for a song that already had an identifier because, well, they didn't really know the first one, so we'll just make a new one up. And one of the key parts here is there's no unified data reporting. So we receive royalties from hundreds and hundreds of sources, and they all come in completely different formats. And even where everybody says they're using one particular format, they're actually using that format but using different bits of data in different columns in different ways. This isn't a new problem particularly, but this is just kind of the way the music industry has grown up, and I'm sure there are other industries that have gone through similar things. And so in order to actually get that money to that writer, all of that has to have gone right across all of those territories, across all of those various different people, without the ability to kind of fall back on someone where you can say, you didn't provide us that information in the correct format, because frankly, we've got to work with them to make them do it properly, because otherwise we're just not going to get paid. We can't go crying to a parent and say, they didn't give it to us in the right format, can you tell them off? Like, we have to go and talk to them and work with them and get them to do it properly, as does a number of people in the industry. And the problem is, a lot of the industry are still working, maybe not quite on these, but certainly they're not working on the most modern technology, and they're using interfaces a little bit like this. So, this is an industry that has come up through, decades worth of working brilliantly for physical and for the kind of rights that they've had to deal with in the past. But the last 10 to 15 years have really kind of hit the industry quite hard. So that map that we showed earlier, when you imagine that we're then putting on top of that people like Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, Deezer, and the 20 or 30 other people that we kind of deal with, that usage and that flow of rights and that flow of payments suddenly gets really, really messy really, really quickly. Which, again, for the artist, for the writer, is not a good thing, because it just makes it more and more difficult to get your money quickly. And that's another thing that I would point out about those maps, those flowcharts earlier on. Not only is the money being cut each time you come down that chain, but the data's being cut as well. So the DSP may have the perfect data, but then they hand it to the first publisher or the first society, and the society kind of goes, I don't really need that stuff there. I know that it's that song and it's that amount of money in that territory, cool. And then they pass it to a publisher who maybe doesn't care about the territory, and they just say, I know it's that song, I'll pay that person. And so if you're at the bottom, you just get anything from this song earned £100 to this song in this territory at this time of day on this radio station got this. And it's just really inconsistent. So the data loss and then the time loss of that as well causes real issues. And so what we've done with the advent of streaming and with digital service providers is we've built on top of an industry that was already fragmented. So in all those territories, with all those societies passing their income to publishers, the digital service providers had to work on top of that. So if you have a song on Spotify, the publishing royalties for that, if you're not with someone who has a global license, like us, you will have to have that income. The income for a play in France will go through a different stream to the income for a play in the UK for the same service. It's just Spotify. So that goes through a different set of chains and a different set of people with a different set of cuts and a different amount of time. So you never have a unified view of this was what I earned for the July, or at least you don't have it until probably 2 years later, when you finally got all of the income from all of the various different territories and all the various different societies. So you can see kind of the world works brilliantly for kind of old rights. For new rights, it's really not working. And when you put that in the context of the industry, as you see, we kind of had a bit of a dip in the 2000s with kind of the internet and with a bit of piracy and some kind of the decline of CDs. But But in 2000, if you sold 3.6 billion units, there were 3.6 billion transactions. That was all you had to really worry about. Sounds like a lot, but you know, and it was only over kind of 70 countries that were really monetized properly. Today, you're seeing trillions, literally trillions of streams, which form trillions of microtransactions, and more than 200 countries monetized. And this forecast section of the thing here, this isn't just kind of numbers we've made up. These are from like quite intelligent companies like Goldman Sachs and reports that have looked at the music industry and the future of the music industry. And these are the forecasts they've come up with. So if you look at where we are now and the problems we're already having with the music industry, if you take us 5 years in the future, 10 years in the future, we're really, really going to be struggling. So one of the reasons Kobalt has done well, you know, we still have that disparate collection societies that we have to do for things like individual kind of radio stuff in various territories. But for DSPs, we have a direct link through our collection society to digital service providers. So we have a global, excluding US, ability to collect all of the income directly straight from Spotify, from Apple, from YouTube, from Deezer, from various others. So they don't go through all those various different territories. It all arrives at the same time. It all comes with the same amount of money taken off of it, or the same amount of data coming through, and the same delay in it. And that just is a real help for artists when, if you imagine you're thinking about going on tour, and previously you wouldn't have any idea how well your thing was doing in some territories because you just didn't get the data in time. Whereas now, you can get that data in 3 to 6 months, 9 months at a push. You can understand that you're doing really well in Brazil with university students. Maybe I'll go and do some university tours in Brazil. You get all that demographic data, you get everything that you might want to do to kind of organize that tour. And so that's kind of where we are. But as you can imagine, all of that data is still massive amounts of data, massive amounts of processing that needs doing, huge amounts of matching to make sure we're paying the right people for the right works, for the right times, in the right territories. And in order to do that, we have a multi-rights platform that we've built up over the last 18 years, which manages everything from our publishing industry, from our publishing entity, collection society. AWOL is the brand that most of you may have heard of more, which is our recording rights entity, and our neighbouring rights entity as well, which kind of deals with performer rights rather than writers or artists, although clearly they overlap. We deal with more than 10,000 income sources. The number of works we have to register every year is going up 2 times each year, if not more. We have more than 200 collection territories, 18 languages, 50 currencies, and more than 1 trillion transactions per annum, which is crazy and scary. And you know, I've only been here 9 years. I say only. I've been here 9 years. It's gone absolutely mental, seeing the numbers that we're looking at. And this is all, as you can see, delivering rights and data management, distribution, registration, collection, payments, data for both writers and artists, as well as publishers and labels. We do a lot of B2B work as well. So that's what we've built to kind of solve this. And we're getting results. This slide is slightly out of date, but as you can see, it doesn't matter whether it's an urban single, a pop single, a rock single. The red bars are what Kobalt collects in the time period, like immediately after release. The grey bars are what other people collect. So we're not only collecting more, we're collecting it faster as well, which is making a real impact on particularly on young writers, on people who are starting out in the industry. And then also going direct in territories rather than going through other publishers and sub-publishers and territories. We're also seeing great uplift there when we go direct as well. There's not many more of those to do, to be honest. We've done that quite a lot, but yeah. And this is for you.
Great, thank you. Dave? Trying to swap the mic here because of the recording. So the reason why we're able to do this, and I think Dave knows better than most people sort of the degree of complexity, and I think this is a truly fascinating and interesting problem when you talk about data at scale, or as is commonly called, the big data problem. you truly have a scale and complexity challenge here. And if you want to know more about it and understand the problem better, of course, people like Dave, you can come talk to me. I'll probably redirect you. There are people like Alison, who I saw earlier. Is she around? Somewhere in the corner over there. She runs our data engineering, data science team. There are various other people like Dawn, who's also in the crowd. Alex Grims, Rodrigo, etc. Loads of people, from Kobalt who are working actively on solving this problem every single day, in the crowd here. So please ask questions and get clarity. But the reason why we do this is ultimately we have built a business that is really, for the creators and really empowering creators so that they can, continue delivering us with great experiences that have meaningful association in different parts of our lives, in different time periods, and ensuring that we do it in a transparent and fair way and kind of giving them direct access in terms of how their music is being distributed and enjoyed, not just through the digital streaming providers, but through various other sources. And we're, as Dave said earlier, drastically reducing the timeline from music being enjoyed to money coming back, or proportionate part of the money coming back in the pocket of artists, right? So ultimately it's kind of the cash flow problem. And in many respects, across lots of different sources, we're able to pay our artists literally, every single month on proportionate engagement, whereas historically it took like 3 years with, very inconsistent data. And of course, our DNA is fundamentally, we are a music business, but we have built this business out of the principal beliefs that technology is absolutely paramount to succeeding. And as things move increasingly more and more digital and into the internet, technology will play a hugely fundamental role in terms of both how Kobalt succeeds, but also in terms of how the music industry as a whole continues to grow and thrive. So the sort of obligatory plug, if you're interested, come and talk to us, visit our site. There are fascinating challenges to solve here. It's the reason why I came. I'm a mission-driven person, and the problems that I've always focused on solving throughout my career are there to sort of improve the lives of the audiences that we serve, and whoever those audiences might be. And I also happen to be a massive, huge music fan, and get to enjoy meeting, a lot of the artists that work with us. We've oftentimes have live acts here, etc. And you kind of get to hear their stories from their perspective in terms of how hard it is not only to kind of create, but kind of reach audiences, grow fan bases, having that engagement and that data for them to be able to make their sort of music distribution and also the types of creations that they do, and also ultimately understand, how they can fund their creations. So I'll finish off very quickly just with a video which I think kind of encapsulates really what we're all about.
We are born creators from the very beginning. We make noise, make messes, make believe, form connections, invent words, shape perspectives, find our voice. We are born creators, but we become artists. We compose a path, we improvise, we work, we play, and we start over. Until we find the right notes, and our secrets become the song. Sometimes we keep it for ourselves. Sometimes we share it with a friend, or a brother, or the one that got away. And maybe, if we're lucky, with the world. And even when the rules change, the results don't add up, and the future becomes uncertain, we keep on writing, playing, and creating. Because that's where we were born.